What's going on, everybody? And in this week's lesson, we are going to check out some simple ways that we can learn our fretboard and learn how to navigate our fretboard by using things hopefully we might know already, and that is we're going to use the minor scale and everyone's favorite pentatonic minor scale. Now, this is not the only way to learn the fretboard, but it is a very useful way, one of many that you should employ to try to learn the notes on your fretboard and to navigate and find your way around. Now, the guitar is nothing but shapes and patterns, so we might as well use that to our advantage, all right? Now, we're in standard tuning for this lesson, and we're going to be playing in B minor. We're going to use the B minor scale as well as B minor pentatonic, okay? So I'm going to assume that everybody knows the pentatonic minor scale, and if you don't, here's good old box number one, right? We're going to be in 7th position, and it's going to be this scale. Okay, an extremely useful scale, and a scale that many beginner guitar players learn very early on. Now, we're not going to be using that box or that shape, all right? We're actually going to be using one octave of it, okay? And to do that, we're actually going to play the first 5 notes. Right? So you have 7-10, 7-9, 7-9. Now, fingering wise, that's going to be 1-4, 1-3, 1-3, right? Now, this is a movable shape on the guitar. It is not locked into 7-10, 7-9, 7-9. Now, the key of B minor is, but the scale shape itself is not. I can put my hands anywhere on the guitar, let's say 4, and play 1-4, 1-3, 1-3. Now I have a minor scale in that key. I can even go to the next string. Same exact thing, now it's that key, but it's still minor pentatonic. So, right off the bat, we should, if you don't know that octave pattern, let's spend some time learning it, right? You can play it chromatically in a nonsensical, non-musical kind of way. If you need maybe a finger exercise, right, I can go. Something along those lines where I'm practicing alternate picking and I'm just kind of working on my finger strength, my finger independence. Now, that's not going to help you learn the fretboard, but it will help you really just drive home that shape into your muscle memory, which is going to be important over the long run. Okay? We move past that. I said we're in the key of B. The 7th fret on the low string is B. I would find all of the other B's on the guitar and play this shape on them, right? So we have 7 of the low string, 2nd fret of the A string, we have the 9th fret of the D string. Now you might have noticed there that when I got to the 2nd string, or the B string, I had to shift up the pattern by a half step, and that's just because of the tuning of the instrument. Once you cross the event horizon between the G and the B string, everything gets shifted up on the guitar by 1 half step. So don't think of it as it's a new pattern. It's the same pattern, you're just making an adjustment. It's still 1-4, 1-3, 1-3, right? Okay, we can have B is also the 4th fret of the G string. Notice again, I had to do the shift, and I did that little diagonal movement right there to catch that scale. All right, perfect. Now, we can also change this to the minor scale, the natural minor scale, or Aeolian mode, if you want to get really complicated with it, nice and fancy, right? It's the same scale, we're just going to add 2 notes. It's going to be 7-9-10, 7-9-10, 7-9. Now that's our natural minor scale, or the Aeolian mode. Now, if you were to play in songs, you can mix and match those, because pentatonic minor and natural minor, it's the same thing, just the overall sound is going to be slightly different. The pentatonic has a unique sound because there's less notes, they're kind of more spaced out, right? So we can do the same thing we just did, but learn that scale pattern. Right? Apply that in the same area. Again, really driving that home. Okay? So now there are more ways than one to play scales on the guitar. And this is where the important factor comes into play here, because we want to be able to connect the different, not only know them, but connect them, and that is going to help us navigate throughout the fretboard, right? So we have this pattern, we'll call it number 1 because it starts on our first finger right there. So notice that the accent points I'm playing in front of this note, I can't play behind my hand. Now if I were to put my pinky on that B note, I can no longer play any of those notes, but I can play the same exact scale, right? Those notes are identical. So this scale pattern is actually going to be pinky, right? And then the next 2 strings are going to be 1, 2, 4 with our fingers, and in this key it's going to be 4, 5, 7. So it's 7, 4, 5, 7, 4, 5, 7, and then 4. Okay? Now, if we want to make that pentatonic, we can just take out a couple of notes and we get, and that is the second pentatonic shape, right? So we're doing this with 2 different shapes here, minor and minor pentatonic. And you might be asking yourself, playing it like this. Well, if you know your box 1, every guitar player's favorite, you already do it, right? When I get up to the octave, right there, I'm on my ring finger. And if I were to play that scale or that box from that note, I get a fingering of 3, 1, 3, 1, 4. Right? That's going to be our second pentatonic pattern. And those are the only 2 ways that you can play the pentatonic scale, which is extremely useful information, right? So if I put my ring finger on the 7th fret of the low string, I have 3. That sounded terrible. Why? Well, it's the same thing. When we play the shape in this position, we crossed over to that 2nd string, so everything moved up. So we're not doing that here, so we actually have to keep it back. So it's going to be, okay? There are the only 2 ways to play pentatonic minor. Fun tidbit, if you go through all the 5 boxes, you'll see that these 2 shapes interconnect with each other. And we're going to kind of talk about that right now. And this is the fun part of this that I really like. All right? You'll notice that if I play that pentatonic pattern, I land on the root note with my first finger. Well, if you've been paying attention so far, the first scale that we played starts with our first finger. See where I'm going with this? So we can go up this pattern. Now I've just connected those 2 scale patterns. Let's do the same thing with the minor scale, right? We have first finger, and then we have the one with the pinky. Well, I land on my first finger, so guess what I can do? There is that minor scale pattern. Now I have this much larger scale run, but again, from a guitar perspective and viewing our fretboard, we don't want to learn or memorize scales 6 strings, 3 octaves. That's not very useful to do, especially when you start playing in maybe new keys that you're not familiar with, right? Over chords that you haven't played before. And we can do the same thing with modes in the future, but we're not getting into that today, right? So let's do this. Let's start here. Do the same thing, right? I can start with pattern number 1. Normally I would end with my ring finger, but for the purpose of this lesson, we can just grab that note with our pinky. And again, if you notice the finger pattern, it's 1, 2, 4. This is an extremely useful way for navigating our fretboard, because not only can you apply this to your major scale, minor scale, major chords, minor chords, but then, like I mentioned before, all of the other modes, right? So I would go through all of the B's in this case and try to make all those connections that you can. Next on that list, besides scale patterns, is we can take the basic triad or arpeggio shapes out of these, right? So first things first, when we play the minor scale, or right, or a minor chord, if we play those three notes, which would be the first note of the scale, skip the fifth note of the scale. Right, so I'm playing the first note, the third note, and the fifth note. When I do that, that's a B minor triad or a B minor chord played one note at a time, right? So this is a more horizontal shape, right? And the other one, if I do it in this position, it's a little more vertical. I have one note on every string, right? 7, 5, right? Very, very, again, very useful because I can apply that to everywhere on the guitar, all the little B's that I've searched out for, right? If I play in the pentatonic scale, I can also easily change this to a 7th chord, right? When I play pentatonic, all I have to do is leave out this note right here, which is the 3rd note of the pentatonic, but the interval is a 4th, right? I get that arpeggio, 7, 10. I just took out that one note of the pentatonic scale. Now I have a B minor 7th chord, okay? Now, if I do it in that position, it's 7, 5, 4, same string, 7. And if you hear the sound of that chord, that is really the true sound of what pentatonic minor sounds like, right? So now I can go to chord. And now maybe this bar chord makes a little more sense because now you can see the scale pattern and you can see the arpeggio that you find within it, right? And if you have that minor scale patterns memorized, moving them to different keys and different chord shapes is much easier, okay? So I would definitely practice this in different keys, different areas, because the last thing you want when you're trying to memorize patterns and shapes is it becomes visual based on the frets you're playing. You don't want your vision to be 7, 10, 7, 9, 7, 9. You'd rather have the finger pattern 1, 4, 1, 3, 1, 3 memorized in your muscle memory. Because if you play in the same key all the time, well then as soon as you play in a different key, your brain, your eyes, just has a hard time processing it because you're used to seeing 7, 10, 7, 9, 7, 9. Now all of a sudden you're playing 4, 7, 4, 6, 4, 6. And you're just not used to playing in that position, okay? So this is not the only way to learn your fretboard. But it is a little bit better than just rote memory or memorizing half steps on every string. There are lots of other ways to do this to learn your notes on the fretboard, right? Learn where all of your keys are is a good step, and you can do that for all of the notes. You can try learning all the notes in one position across one fret. What are all the notes in, say, 3rd fret, right? E, C, F, flat, E, right? Now you can have that in front of you, you can memorize it. It's not the most fun, it's not the most musical, but at least if you practice your keys and your chords, your scales and your chords over it, it becomes a little more interesting. All right, so there you go. Down in the description below, you can find the tabs with these triad shapes, the arpeggio shapes, and these scale patterns written down on all of the Bs. Okay, so as always, let me know what you come up with. So until then, I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.